So story. Oh, wait, wrong.
Sorry about that. I'm back. Are we, do we have an agenda for this one?
So my understanding is that, tell me if everyone's in agreement, I believe that the purpose of today's meeting was for us to finalize an MOU that getting some feedback.
I'm back. Are we, do we have an agenda for this one?
Do you have your YouTube link open?
Tell me if everyone's in agreement. There we go. Okay. It was me. I was just checking to make sure we were on the live feed before we started, and I was getting playback. Okay, so my understanding is that the reason that we are meeting is to finalize the terms of an MOU for compensation and other supports for our elementary teachers who will be impacted by the learning model selection changes that elementary students were permitted to make.
Hey, and Rachel, I would add that if we indeed do an MOU at the end, that we also talk about just the one meeting for notification rather than the two that we would typically do.
Yeah. And I could not find, I think that may be more of a procedure thing that we've just always done as practice in Shawnee Mission School District, which, I mean, it makes a lot of sense why you would do that, right? So that you have an opportunity to get feedback from a teacher who may be subject to a reassignment. But I couldn't find anything in the MOU that set up a, two notice procedure for reassignment. And I think maybe the only reason I think that matters is that if we were going to deviate from anything that was in the P&A, I think we would need to reference that in an MOU. But I couldn't find any language in the P&A. I think it's more of a practice matter.
I would agree with that. I looked for it as well, and I could not find it, but I thought Michael said it was there. So I don't. Maybe it is just procedure.
I looked as well, and I think it has just been some common practice procedural measures we've gone through as a common courtesy, but just as a best practice.
I mean, that may be even expectation. Some people may have that expectation. So I think that's important that we talk about it.
And the funds that we were going to use for this, we're going to come out of, I guess, for lack of a better term, the COVID fund. I don't know what you.
CARES. It's called the CARES Fund.
Is that what we're going to? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Is there a way to find out? I don't know if maybe Russ knows what our balance is in that fund.
Yeah, I had it updated maybe 3-4 weeks ago. We had about $800,000 left. We started with 2.6 million.
Okay. Right.
Russ, is that taking out what we are currently spending for non-public schools? Because I have a large chunk of that money coming out.
Okay, let me look that up.
Do we
go ahead, Jay.
have a more concrete number of staff that's affected?
We do. Michael, do you want to start or you want me to do it?
Yeah, we have a pretty good idea. Some good news, we think, where we expected a vast number of staff to have to relocate, change grade levels, change modes, things like that. It's going to be far less than what we anticipated. So again, some great work by Kevin in working with those principals, but we're thinking under 20. And so I don't want to give a final number yet. We're still tweaking things. Enrollments are still changing and things like that. But I do think it's going to come in under 20.
With the largest majority of that 20 only changing learning modes.
That's right.
Okay, so going from a remote teacher to an in-person teacher?
That's correct. And I do anticipate one or two going the other way as well.
Yeah, we get a lot of feedback, and Linda Seek and Kevin Scarrow, they probably get the majority of the calls since it's kind of their number that's posted for when you have an issue. But just a lot of teachers that they put in, you guys know, the 4 or 5 weeks getting set up and getting ready and starting what they're doing, and so for those like 20 teachers or less, it's going to be a really big change. And I kind of feel like I'm just not sure if the amounts we talked about last time is actually really sufficient for the amount of time they're going to have to put in, or what they maybe even put in outside of the contract before to get ready, for another change, I guess, in a sense. So that's why I was kind of wanting to find out what was left in the CARES fund and have a discussion about that.
So let me give you some quick numbers. This is from a month ago. We had to allocate about $432,000 to the private school of that 2.6 million. What we have spent or committed to in the future, we have approximately $400,000 left in the CARES fund, and then another $260,000 in the CARES fund for just special education.
Okay. Would the special education CARES fund, could that be used if a special education teacher was changing? Like from remote or in person or something like that? Like, does it have specific requirements of how to use that?
Or are there even any affected by that, Mike?
I don't really heard you.
We're asking how many special education teachers?
Oh, I thought he was reading something and double checking.
I don't think there are
I'm going-
any special education teachers impacted that. I can't say that off the top of my head 100%, but I don't recall that. I would think that if there were, that yes, we could use those funds. But the largest majority will be the general fund.
I mean, I think most of the time, at least from what I've heard, SPED teachers, we have SPED teachers kind of teaching the full spectrum of fully in person, hybrid, all the way to remote only anyway. So it would just kind of change the delivery model, needing to redo schedules, things like that, for kids as they change modes.
Yeah, and those numbers that I quoted you guys, I can say with near certainty that those are gen ed teachers that we're talking about.
Do you have a definite date on when you are going to inform those teachers?
Tomorrow is the goal.
If students are changing, oh, sorry.
No, that's the plan, tomorrow.
If students are changing a teacher, is that also found out tomorrow?
No, the timeline for that is later in the week. And so we've pinpointed the 25th, so Friday. Principals at this point are building their sections and their rosters on paper. And then, of course, the remote program has to do that as well. That's a little more robust activity to get that done. And so we believe by Friday, we'll be able to deliver that information to both the teachers and to the parents as to who their new teacher and their new section might be.
Okay. I would like to propose that it be, I know we had like kind of tiers last time. I think that it would be, I would like to propose $1,000 for if you have to change grade levels, as a stipend for that. because of all the planning, meeting a new team, possibly moving a building, I guess, moving a room, for all the hours that you'll have to put in inside of the contract time for that.
So I don't know that we have much wiggle room, guys, on the numbers. What we talked about that we could do last time was a tiered level of $200, $300, and $400, depending on, you know, whether it's just a learning model change, whether it's learning model plus physical building, or learning model plus physical building plus grade level. What we can do, since we met last, in getting your guys' feedback and what we could add on top of that in terms of additional cost components, is provide a full day substitute before the change occurs for each one of those impacted teachers. And then in addition, we could offer up to 4 hours of assistance from another professional employee to help with whatever that impacted teacher may need, whether it's as simple as packing up their classroom or getting some cleaning assistance and orientation. And then I know we talked about a lot of other sort of supports that could be provided that I'm not going to be able to articulate well, but in terms of, hey, if you have to make changes, here's sort of some templates or models for your instruction that you can, you know, take and make your own. So those are things that we could add on as sort of cost components to those stipend amounts.
We also, though, have, you know, money in reserves, and that CARES fund is supposed to be used for things that are COVID related, which, you know, this certainly is, because the reason we're having to change, right, and redo things is because of changing from remote to in person. And so I think that it should be more. There's a lot that's involved with getting everything packed up and moving buildings, or even setting up your room. And also, like I said, you know, if you're changing grade levels, that's a really big thing to redo what you're teaching, and the stress of all of it, having to change more than once at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I understand that position. I know there's a lot of work involved, and it's sort of a common theme we've been hearing from really all groups of employees since this started. You know, it's you know, because of COVID, I'm having to do so much extra work. You know, obviously it's a stressor for many of our employee groups. But I do know here, you know, we're sort of above and beyond a lot of the extra work that's being asked of other employees. This is a big change, and guys, this is what we can do right now in terms of stipends, and then, you know, other cost components.
I guess sorry, Mike. I guess I'm just a little confused, because I thought part of us meeting again was, you know, we had this group of 50 and kind of what that would cost if those 50 people were all affected. And now we've cut that to under 20 people being affected. I think I left last week thinking, under the impression that part of this was if the number of people who were being affected was less, then those number amounts would be increased. That was kind of the impression that I was given. You know, and if we're talking about, typically people are getting about 16 hours of time to change if it's at the beginning of the year. And we're talking about an hourly rate of about $20. That's $320 right there. And so we're undercutting that in some cases, and we're talking about a middle of the year change. I'm concerned that if given $200, $300, or $400, people are going to say, then I'm going to resign. And that's going to cause a huge crisis within our district. You know, even if it is under 20 people, that's going to put a big stress on elementary buildings.
and the amount of tear down and put back up of your, just your classroom in general, especially depending on how long you've been there. I know if I've been in my room for 9 years, that would take me at least 16, 20 hours to pack everything and put back up.
And again, we will have obviously assistance from facilities with that. So what we added since last time was a full day sub and up to 4 hours of assistance. Are you guys, do you think that the stipend is more important and you would rather see that moved over instead of those support pieces, have that instead shifted over just to be a straight stipend?
I think that is something that we could look at, because I know there were people that said creating sub plans can sometimes be harder anyway. And maybe, if you had a sub in your room teaching your class and you were packing up your class as well, and you're listening to the sub teach and the kids know you're there, and, that kind of thing. I think.
Is that what helps them? Is the compensation in forms of a stipend, is that the most important, way to support, or the highest priority?
I think so, because it's a lot of their time, right? That they would have been able to, right, be at home with their families, or, resting and getting back ready for the week again. And I think it's a way to show them that their time is appreciated, that, treat them as like professionals in a sense.
Okay. So,
And I can tell you guys that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please, Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, I was going to tell you guys, that was the idea of adding the additional sub support, was taking in all of the different suggestions, the stipend, that some people might want the sub, that some people might want the additional hours to move with their peer. So to throw everything at it, that, let's give them everything that would possibly be of assistance. But I am hearing you, and so I don't know, Rachel, what you're thinking, but to get, because that's basically 8 hours, right, of a sub sub cost. Do we throw that back at? I don't even know if we have the authority to do this, Rachel. So I'm sorry if I'm getting out ahead of you, but just
Yeah.
you can take the additional 8 hours and apply it towards a stipend, or I don't even know. We'd have to probably go back and talk.
Well, it equates to $275. It's $175 in a sub, and it's roughly $100 for those 4 hours of support. So, the option, if we were going to do that, would be to take $275 and apply it to the stipend and not do the sub and the additional hours.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too.
I think we can do that. And then I would leave it to our NEA team members to tell us what they think most elementary teachers would want. Would they want this sort of 3-tiered approach where it's stipend plus sub day plus 4 hours that you can have a coworker be compensated to assist you, or would it be better to just do a stipend?
I would also ask the question, does it have to be the same? Can we differentiate based on what the teacher's needs are? I might be someone that absolutely doesn't want a sub, where, Jill might say, no, I need a sub.
Are those numbers that we talked about, and the amount you talked about now with the cost of a sub and hours, is that amount like a take it or leave it? You know what I mean? Like, this is all we can offer. That's what we have for the MOU.
That's a limit of our authority right now. And I don't know that there'd be anything that would change that, but we're always willing to have the discussion. We would never, I don't think I would be as conducive to like walking away and not continuing the discussion, but I think it would be beneficial from a time perspective to let these individuals know tomorrow, what supports we're providing in terms of things that have a cost component. All those other things like facilities providing support and help with their instructional plans and things like that obviously we will march forward and do. But I think we're sort of got a time crunch, which is why we scheduled this meeting today, because we want to let people know tomorrow. And certainly if we're going to give them sort of a bifurcated choice, right? You can get full stipend, or you can get a lowered stipend amount and get a sub and have some teacher help, then they're going to want to be able to make that choice tomorrow.
I do
So
think, good.
we have a rep council directly after this, and it would be great where we can actually just ask people and we can get a clear idea, and then Jill could email after that. I think that would help us a lot. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I don't have an idea of how much time it's going to take somebody, because my situation's completely removed from that. So, I mean, to me, the best thing for us to do is to now take this, because we meet here in half an hour. I don't know why my microphone is so cranked right now. And we can get back with you. We'll send an email directly after that.
Yeah. And I think we can go ahead and we can put out as an offer, basically those tiers, 200, 300, 400, with an extra 275 at each tier, either to go straight on the stipend, or again, because we're talking about, in the range of 20 teachers, I don't think that'd be too difficult to administer if they wanted to instead have a sub, or have a sub plus be able to compensate, have a friend be compensated to help them out. So, yeah, I think that feedback is important. I can use the time in between then and now to be drafting up alternative language for an MOU, so it can be ready to go tonight. But yeah, I do think it'd be nice if we can, as we're talking to them tomorrow, help, HR can help them make their plan, right? Like, I just want the stipend, or I'm going to need a day where I have a sub.
Okay, so could you clarify one more time? If you're doing the 4 hours of assistance, that includes the sub, right?
So a sub, I think Michelle said, is $175 a day.
Well, you were doing the 200, 300, 400.
Yeah.
That includes having a substitute and then 4 hours of assistance, correct?
Correct.
If you do not choose to have the sub and the 4 hours of assistance, it's going to go to 475, 575, and 675.
Correct.
And then the lowest tier is just if you're moving from remote to in-person. The 300 is remote to in-person plus, is that the building change? Or is that a grade level?
Building change.
Okay, and then the 400, or the top one, was all three.
Yes.
So if the plan was originally 200, 300, 400 for 50 people affected, and now we're talking 20 people, that's a much smaller piece of the pie. There isn't a way to talk to DOE to consider, okay, this was the amount, you were okay spending. If it was 50, can we increase the amounts for the less than 20 people that it is?
So we did not have a real great idea at all. We just knew we had a real large number of students, right? I think over 1,000 that were changing learning modes. That was a rough estimate, and we weren't going through calculating, a certain piece of our CARES fund pies. We weren't doing that at all. I think in terms of thought process, it's basically just that the CARES fund is dwindling incredibly quickly, and we are at mid-September.
Rachel, I would add to Lindsay, I apologize if someone led you to believe that, because that was definitely not my takeaway when we were talking about it the other day. But I do think that it's important to note that 50 was the worst case scenario if you just strictly ran the numbers. And we really didn't ever think it was going to be that high. I mean, we even said that we were hopeful it wasn't going to be that high, but we had really no idea what it was until we sit down and crunch the numbers. So 50 would have been an absolute worst case scenario, and that's if we moved every single person based strictly on numbers. But we also knew that there was a lot of seats available and in person, and we knew it wouldn't have to be that many, but we just had no idea what that number was.
I mean, it's just a little bit different than our normal budgetary process. I mean, it's not like this, where we have an idea of, like we do with our budget process, of how much we need to allocate to certain things. There's going to be more that we need to purchase, and potentially even, instances where we want to do stipends and we're not going to have the money at some point.
I know he said, I think Russ was saying about 400,000 left over in the CARES fund. And if we had all 20 of those teachers take the full 675, that'd be about 13,500, which is, hold on, about 3.5% of that. So, I don't know. I really want to make sure that this is something that, like, it sounds like a good offer to these teachers. It's a lot of stress on them, and moving from one to the next, and wanting to just do as best as you can with starting, fresh in either a new building or a new grade level. And so that's, I think, why we're wondering if, it is possible to speak with the Board of Education to see if they would be willing to, offer a higher stipend.
And again, I think we just have that time issue. If you guys, if you're uncomfortable reaching an agreement today, then we don't. We don't reach an agreement, and we still support this. All the ways that we talked about at our meeting last week. But then it may be until our next meeting, that we're having an opportunity to sit down and revisit the stipend. We've, as part of our process to reach an agreement for this year, we talked about, hey, let's watch the budget. Let's see how things are going through the school year. Again, the real challenge here is that we are at September on a school year that's going to go all the way through May. We have no idea the types of expenses and challenges. I mean, we have some idea, but we just don't know exactly what's going to come at us and hit us as we proceed the rest of the way through this school year. And so we're just trying to be very careful with what remains of those CARES funds and, of our available balances. But we have a commitment that we will revisit and show you where the budget is going. And we can start doing that as early as next month, start looking at those numbers. Where are we going? What are our balances looking like?
I'm going to suggest, and this is probably going to be an unpopular thing, but this is very much traditional bargaining. The board's team is saying, this is what we have, this is what we can do. And we're saying, we're uncomfortable with this. So I think we need to stop, and we need to IBB this next month when we meet with Stephanie, because we're just back and forth. And this doesn't feel like IBB. It definitely feels like we have a hard line here and we're just hitting a hard line, and I don't think it's going to be productive for any of us.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. I would note, I don't think this is like traditional bargaining. We approach the team with a request that we have elementary teachers come and give feedback. We listen to that feedback. We've done the absolute best we can to make notes of it and meet that feedback. I'm not aware of any other school district that's doing these types of stipends and making these kinds of offers to their staff that are impacted. And we have tried to work through ways that last meeting it was requested that we have sub support and those additional compensation hours for people who help. And so we added that in. And now we're hearing, well, maybe that's not priority. So we're willing to take that and shift it to the stipend. So
I'm thinking more so about like just the stipend conversation. Like if we're at one place and you guys are at another, and I don't like us just volleying back and forth. We're both, saying our individual sides, but we're not moving. I think that the things that you guys have been able to hear, and I think last time was really great. I'm saying specifically this conversation about stipends. We're just volleying back and forth like we do in traditional bargaining, specifically about.
I'm going to point of clarification. We've had a member of our team say they wish to IVV this. And due to our agreement that at any time a member suggests that we're done if we're following our agreed upon rules. So.
Okay. Understood. And that's the agreement that we have. So then I guess we just need to decide what we're going to communicate tomorrow then to our elementary teachers.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest that we communicate that the board is, or the district and the board is committed to providing some form of stipend and support. And we're going to work through that through the IVB process, what that's absolutely going to look like. I would suggest, if everyone were to agree, that we go ahead and provide sub support if someone wants it. And then we'll work through the rest of the numbers after that. I don't want them to forego a sub if they need it.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Of course.